Talking to Sarah Longwell. You just got off the stage. You have been a longtime friend of Principals First. How would you describe the energy in the ballroom compared to past summits that you've been to?
Well, last year was the year there was a bomb threat right before I came in. So this was better than that.
Yes.
No, it's amazing. Look, I love being at Principals First. This is a crowd that is maybe the most my people, because a lot of these folks sort of either are people who, like me, were longtime conservatives or Republicans who, when Trump came along, said, hey, this isn't who I want to be or a party I want to be affiliated with, and I want to find ways to find a community of like-minded people to push back. And then the way that it's grown to include, I even asked their sort of people like, hey, are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? And it's like a super mixed crowd that all want to show up together to really think about just how we can, restore sort of basic American principles. Like in the beginning, I think it really was Principles First was about sort of more conservative principles. And I think it's evolved, like a lot of us have, to really be about first principles, the basic principles, constitutional principles, and how we can all come together to support those.
So a lot of what you talked about on stage was your recent trip to Minnesota, the focus groups that you did there. And it was a really inspiring story just about the community and coming together. Bill Kristol was on our first panel today, and I know he's one of yours from the Bulwark. And he had talked kind of about a similar thing. You know, he referenced bowling alone and just this sense of community that seems to be lost, but that the people in Minnesota seem to have found it. How do we carry on that message to people in other communities that aren't necessarily facing the same threats, but that feel the need for community is still just as important?
Yeah, I mean, I was so struck. I was asking myself this question. I was like, look, because ICE was here in D.C., and I do think that a similar thing happened where people were kind of looking out for their neighbors, but it wasn't the way that their ability to sustain out there is really incredible. And also what they have seen is, I think, different from what other communities have seen, because multiple Americans have been shot in the streets by ICE agents being wildly overzealous and unprofessional. And so it's really, I think, scary for them. But I kept wondering, like, is there something special about Minnesota, or can other places do this too? And I think the answer is that there are communities all over America where this can happen. I don't think it's just in Minnesota, but I do think that there's something fundamental there that I think people can learn from and should get inspired by. And because I'm not sure that something seems to be happening more naturally for them than is happening in other places. And so I hope that people can learn from what they're doing, because I think every place has the capacity for that, because we all exist in these spaces together, love the places that we're from, love the places where we're raising our kids. But there's a fearlessness in them there that I think other people need to start to discover. And I think that's happening.
Well, I think that ties into something else you said, where you referenced your early career, where you said your boss would say, what would you do if your life depended on it? And I think for people in Minneapolis, they've seen, based on what's happened there, that sometimes they think their life does depend on it. Maybe that's an important takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes that's when something, like, the worse it gets, the more it kind of demands from people the kind of coming together. And I think, there's just a real, appreciation there for both Alex Preddy and Renee Good, and the way that people decided, no, absolutely no more of this, absolutely not again, and we're going to take care of each other. They have been inspired to take care of each other. And so much of what built America was this sense of, figuring out not how to go. It's not always rugged individualism. It was always kind of a rugged community. Here's how we're going to build things together, and we're going to have a set of principles that all of us live under that allow a lot of different kinds of people to live together in a community and come together. And so in some ways, they just, it seemed like the best of America out there.
Yes, the other thing you talked about was the focus groups that you are very well known for running. And you talked about the Access Hollywood tape and how a lot of young people had not seen that before. Was there anything else in some of the recent focus groups that you've done that has surprised you, not just about young people, but about where public opinion is at?
Yeah, oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think some of what has surprised me is, look, the Republican Party that I grew up in, it was very focused on character and character counting. But it was also one that sort of, if you're my age, you remember sort of George W. Bush conservatism, where democracy was not just like the best thing we did here, but also something that you wanted to see sort of happen other places. Yeah. And the Republican Party now is very isolationist, we don't want to be anywhere else in the world. And actually the thing that surprised me, and maybe it shouldn't, is how people are kind of like, when Trump then says, oh, I'm going to invade Greenland, or we're going to take it over, or, maybe we're just going to make Canada the 51st state, or maybe we're going to go to war with Iran. How much a lot of his voters who would cite the sort of foreign adventurism of the past as a reason why they no longer liked that version of the Republican Party seem to not really be holding Trump accountable for what he's doing. And I think a lot of that goes to the depth of people's unwillingness to sort of break with Trump over anything for his hardcore base. But I think in better news, there are a lot of swing voters who are looking at what Trump is doing now, who say, this isn't what I voted for. This isn't what I signed up for. This isn't what I wanted. And so I think a lot about how Democrats are going to need to figure out how to bring those people back in by running candidates that are appealing to sort of a much broader coalition of people if we're going to beat back. Because you can't just win one election or two elections. I think a lot of us understand now that to reform the Republican Party or to get it back to something that would ever be worth supporting, this version needs to undergo a sort of sustained electoral defeat. And Democrats have to demonstrate that they can build a big, broad coalition that kind of isolates this really fringy, crazy MAGA coalition. You can see sort of the America First wing of the party and sort of the MAGA establishment starting to fracture. And so I think it's important that there's a statesman level commitment from Democrats to figure out how to build a really big coalition.
Makes me think of, have you seen the movie Mean Girls?
Of course.
Gretchen Wieners had cracked.
Yeah.
The MAGA base has cracked.
Yeah.
So, who's going to be our Janice Ian,
Great. That's a great pull. Great reference.
Yes. Well, closing it out, we want to end on an optimistic note. What are you seeing from your travels, your focus groups that just gives you hope for where we go from here as a nation?
I'm hopeful about a lot of things, although that part of that is my nature. I try not to get too desolate. Look, I just think that one thing people need to understand is how much 2024, as hard as it is to think about people voting for somebody who had tried to cause an insurrection and try to overthrow government, that's a tough pill to swallow, to know that enough Americans could be okay with that. But they really did vote for him because people felt like things were too expensive and they just wanted somebody to fix it. And Trump hasn't. Mm-hmm. And I think that people are, I think that if people think that Trump has built a durable MAGA coalition that can be dominant in the future, I do not think that is true. But I do think Democrats have to figure out how to effectively counter it.
All right. Well, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me. Yeah.